Hey, folks, welcome back to Money and Politics on Monday, August the 16th. Good to have you back. I took a couple of days off and went out of town and came back early today and was picking up some of the pieces of things that were left as you get out of town. And the news broke this afternoon, as you know, that Humbl finally did put out its second quarter earnings. So I'm going to go over some of that. It is, however, if you haven't looked, 53 pages. And some of the most interesting parts here are literally at the very last part of the whole report. And I haven't been able to sit there and just delve through every page, but I think we have the gist. First of all, just briefly, let me bring up where we are on the stock, and you see it here. Obviously 80 cents. It had dipped down earlier in the day to below 80 cents, but came back, as you can see. It doesn't matter so much what the price is, it matters where we're going. And I think the thing is, why is it that something would be going up? Why will Humbl be going up? And I think we're beginning to see the beginnings of why it will go up in this report. Now, I'm going to repeat what I said some weeks ago. And what I said some weeks ago is that on the second quarter earnings, which we just got, is where you're just going to begin just the embryonic stage of revenues. You're only going to begin, and then we'll have to see the third and the fourth quarter and subsequent quarters. But this report does at least give us some of the very beginning and things we can look at and chew on, and there's certainly some interesting items here. And so let's get to it real quick. If we look, we have for the first 6 months, so this is the first and second quarters, second quarter ending June 30th. Basically, I would say there was nothing of note in the first quarters from an earnings standpoint. But we see here that we had revenues, the company, Humbl, had revenues of $382,216. The cost of goods sold, $143,865. And then your gross profit, and if you don't know, your gross profit is then before you start to take away things like salary and office space and others. But if you just take away the cost of goods from the total revenues, you get your gross profit, as you see, $238,351. Now, what else was of interest in here? One thing that was of interest, and again, this is on page 53, near the end, on July 29. So this is actually not even in the second quarter. This is now the third quarter because the second quarter ended June 30th. But here in the second quarter report, they had these subsequent notes. And it said July 29, the company entered into a development service agreement with Red Rock Development Corporation. The company intends to purchase and or develop a portfolio of real estate assets and then potentially tokenize the interest in the portfolio. So I thought that's intriguing, and that's pretty cool. And I had talked early on. I mean, I think that one thing you look at, if you have a house, you might have $200,000, $500,000 of equity in a house, and it's sitting there, not making any interest, unavailable to you because it's illiquid. And I've often thought, because this comes from investing in real estate, and you realize that you got all that money sitting there, but you can't put your hands on it. And that's one of the major problems with real estate, is that it is illiquid. By the way, I might bring this up real quick since I haven't. It's illiquid. And if we could tokenize real estate, Humbl could tokenize it so that you could basically be selling shares, or the same concept, I would say, as selling shares in a company where you could get money out without having to sell all of the totality of the asset. That's a problem with real estate. You own the totality of the asset. You got to sell the totality of the asset. And if you need the money, that's the only thing you do, sell the building. But it's nice if you could tokenize it and get some money out. So anyway, that's pretty interesting, I think, coming up. By the way, too, is just let me get this in if you haven't already written that down. And I do go through and I see that there's some comments. And in fact, I need, if you emailed me since Friday, I need to catch up on that. But that's it. Now, what else? What else is, and I think this is among the things that are the most interesting. So let's review here for a minute that we're talking about the second quarter sales, and the second quarter sales for Humbl, that's April, May, and June. Now, earlier in the year, Humbl said they were going to buy Tickery, but that business we didn't close that deal until June the 4th. Now, you know, if you're going to buy a house and you come to an agreement and they accept your offer, that you don't necessarily close right then. The closing date might be a month or even 2 months away, depending upon factors. So that's the same here with Tickery. They had earlier in the year come to an agreement to buy Tickery, but they didn't close on it until June the 4th, which meant that the sales from Tickery were not Humbl's sales until the deal had closed. So with that in mind, let's look at the numbers. And here we have Tickery sales since June the 4th, when they closed, through the total ticket sales since June 4th through August 9. Okay, June 4 to August 9. So roughly 2 months, 3,528,213. Now, June 4 through June 30 sales were the second quarter, and those sales were $1,149,749. And then since June 3rd, sales that we have already would go into the third quarter report from June 30th. I say June 3rd, I misspoke. From June 30th through August 9, you see there July 1st, August 9, is $2,378,000. So what is interesting is that for the period of June, now you're missing 4 days, but you got 1.15 million. And here then we have, yes, a bit longer period of time, July through August 9, you got 5 weeks as compared to about 3 weeks, but still this is about twice as much sales. So that's promising that the ticket sales were going up. So when we have here that June 4 through June 30 sales were 1.15, 1,149,000. If I go back again to what were the total sales, we were talking 382. So the sales from the tickets from June 30th through, whoops, wrong one, were what, about a third? Ticket sales were about a third of the revenue. So I think that's one of these are key things here, folks. We're getting sales from ticketing. Brian Foote had said that he's trying to find another ticketing company to purchase. We have the sale also of Monster in there, and what I'm going to say, rather than missing the forest for the trees, I want to give you the big picture. The big picture is we're generating income. The income is growing on ticket sales. It's going to be growing on NFTs and the other lines, the ETXs, etc. So we're starting to see the ball rolling here on Humbl. Now, if people are sitting there, and I can just imagine some of the critics, because sometimes the critics seem like they want to go out of their way to make statements that are just kind of, to me, off the mark. Trying to say, how do you justify the valuation of the company based upon these little revenues? You base the valuation on the fact that the company has so much enormous potential, and that people are willing to buy today's price of 80 cents, and they're willing to pay that for the future potential based upon the growth of the company as they see it going. And that is standard fare. I mean, it's when you get a company growing, as we saw with Amazon, we saw with Tesla and the other, for years they didn't have any profits. So we got Humbl, and we got Humbl growing, and we got the investors, you and me and others out there looking to buy based upon the fact that these revenues are coming. We can see, and I'm going to remind you that the ticket sales worldwide are $100 billion. So yes, while we look to have the peer-to-peer payments coming up, and that being a massive explosion, right? That's probably where all of us really focused on Humbl to begin with. But it's not to say that the ticket division can't produce significant revenues. It can. And I think, as I have said in previous videos, that if you get ticket sales that are only 0.5%, that's going to be $500 million. 0.5% is going to be $500 million, since we have a potential global market for tickets of $100 billion annually. So, folks, there you go. It's on the website. You can look up under the financials and bring it up. As I say, it's 53 pages. And we'll have to see what Brian says. He'll be going over the numbers. But I think, Thomas said in our conversation, and I agreed with him, that we didn't have a whole lot of expectations for the second quarter, for the very reason, as we had said at that time, that they were laying the foundation. But as we had noted in the Tickery purchase, that they hadn't closed until there's only 3 weeks left in the second quarter when they closed on Tickery. 3 weeks out of a 3-month quarterly period. So you're not going to have shocking revenues, explosive revenues on 3 weeks instead of 3 months. Now we move on to the third quarter, and we're going to be able to see what are the revenues for the full 3 months on all the lines, the business lines. What other deals are going to be made, if any, between now and the end of the third quarter? We see right here, the last line there, that third quarter sales, which started July 1, and July 1 through August 9 ticket sales, they've already racked up $2,378,464. So, if you look at it, the 3.5 million, and they're counting on just really over about 2-month period, June 4 through August 9, you're already averaging about 1.75 million in sales a month on tickets, and hopefully that'll pick up if we can ever get past this COVID-19 and all the different variations of it that spring up and bounce around. So that's where we are, folks. I'm sorry if I'm a little discombobulated today, because this came out when I was still kind of putting the pieces back together from being on the road for a couple of days, seeing family. But I hope that gives you some insight. I'm optimistic. I think it's exciting that we are finally seeing the growth of some of these companies that we have long talked about. And then what's really going to be exciting is as we go into the third quarter and fourth quarter. And again, I'm always cognizant, and I would like you to be, of what is going on behind the scenes that we don't know about. But I think that's often going to be I suspect there are discussions going on, and that when Brian does his investor call coming up, which I don't have the time for a date of that just yet, but when that happens, we will also be getting some more information about the second quarter. But then, like everything, we move on to the third quarter, and hopefully, what we are going to see is finally some people regaining their confidence, seeing that there is growth, seeing that the whole explosive potential of Humbl is starting to move. They're pulling out of the dock and they're going on their cruise towards profitability. So, folks, with that, I'll let you go. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful week. And I hope we have some other good news to report this week. Wouldn't that be something if we hear something about what has been in conversation behind the scenes? In the meantime, I'll be following Humbl's story and others, and I hope you'll stay tuned. Thanks so much. Give me your comments if you wish. Tell me what you think. Are you encouraged, discouraged? Let me know, and we'll see you next time.